In this video, I'm going to try to explain the math and logic, or one might say illogic, of the reciprocal tariff calculations that were behind the what will I think soon be infamous Liberation Day tariff announcement. And so we start with the Office of the United States Trade Representative, and they get down. This is the thing, right? They talk about their basic approach and they have this equation. Now that freaks everybody out, but it also had people who are not familiar with math, they see the Greek letters and go, oh my God, what's going on there? I'm going to explain this to you. It's actually fairly simple, but it also had people who understand math really scratching their heads because it didn't make any sense. Because they're saying that these are reciprocal tariffs, yet this has got nothing to do with tariffs. It's everything to do about um, quantities, right? And how much is going through. And so this equation, I've looked at this and I think I'm certain that I understand how they got here. So let's just go. And my argument here is that they started out with the proposition, hey, what change in U.S. tariff rates will eliminate a trade deficit with a country? So they wanted to say, hey, on this side of the equation here, right? If what you know, this is we're gonna if we raise the tariff rate, we're gonna decrease imports. What decrease in imports? And essentially, what tariff rate do we need to do to get a decrease in imports that will equal the trade deficit with that country? Now, why do I think that? Well, if I just do away with these words, if I do here, actually, let me go this way with it, and now I can do away. We're going to see that we have the elements, right, of this. I'm going to leave that there for a second. So what are these things? Let's start over here. X and M. X is the U.S. exports to nation I. So for X sub I, this is, if we're looking at China, right? This is U.S. exports to China. M is U.S. imports from China. And that's why I say this is the trade deficit, right? That's why. So that is exactly what that is. I got a little line under there because we're going to get around to having a fraction. So let's just ignore that line. This stuff over here is what freaks people out. We've got this epsilon, right? Lowercase epsilon. If you went to a fraternity or sorority, these are lowercase epsilon and phi. Epsilon is over here, right? The elasticity of imports with respect to import prices, right? So this is an estimate, or this parameter is an elasticity calculation, and it says, hey, if we increase the price of the imports from China by, or whatever country, by 1%, what's the change in imports, right? And so if the price goes up 1%, the imports go down. Now, this should be a negative number, I think, but it's expressed as an increase in tariffs having a decrease in it, right? So when you increase the price, how much does the quantity demanded go down? For phi, right, there in the middle, phi is the pass-through from tariffs to import prices. And so that's the thing, is like, hey, if I put a 1% tariff on a product, how much of that passes through to the price, right? And because we know that maybe not all the tariff is going to be, I mean, if the entire cost of the tariff was just dumped onto the price, it would be 1. But what if the importer tries to absorb, maybe the exporting company takes a haircut, lowers the price so that it can compete. And so, what is the pass-through from the tariff rate to the price expressed in percentages? Then we have M, right, which is, of course, the imports. And we're going to multiply it. Oops, I don't have the multiplication asterisk there, pretend it's there, times the tariff rate, right, a change in tariff. And actually, the change in tariff, you would multiply, if you had a 1%, whatever your tariff rate is, you multiply it times the price pass through. If we were to organize this a little better, we'd go to the price pass through, right? So 5% tariff, if the price pass through is 1, the whole 5% goes through. If it's 0.5, the only half would go through. So the change in price would be 2.5%, right? 5% tariff, half of 5% would be 2.5%. And that price would then be multiplied times epsilon, right? Epsilon there, here, elasticity of imports. And we'd say, hey, if, let's say the elasticity was let me get a nice number. Let's say it was 10. It was really elastic, right? So an increase in 1% would have a 10% drop in the amount demanded. Then if we had a 2.5, right, because the tariff's 5, the pass through is 1/2, so half of that's 2.5. 2.5% times 10, that would be, oh my God, a 25% decrease in the whole number. Do you see how that works? Right? And so we have all this over here would be calculating, would be how much those things would go down, how much imports would go down, given epsilon, given phi, given the amount of imports to begin with, and a change in tariff. So the thing is, this is not this, right? But hey, what if we divide both sides? I know it's algebra, but if we divide both sides of an equation by the same thing, right? It's still an equation. And so we get this, and then, hey, look, we got something divided by itself. That's 1. So we scratch it out, right? Back in the day, I would cross a line through it. But, oh, does this not look? Yes, that's this. So my point is that what they did is they came up with an equation that they solved for how much they need to change the tariff in order to wipe out the trade deficit. Now, the funny part of this is, what are they using for epsilon and phi for this to actually make sense? Because one, they're lying. This is not reciprocal tariffs. This is the amount U.S. tariffs would have to change to eliminate the trade deficit that we're running with any particular country. If we have the appropriate epsilon and phi, right? If we have the right elasticity of imports with respect to import prices and the right pass-through. Well, what did these guys do? And honestly, if we go back, right, we can see that they set the price, the elasticity, without any reason. They said the price elasticity of import demand epsilon was set at 4. Okay, it was set at 4. Then they have this whole sentence, right? But the key part is here. The elasticity of import prices with respect to tariffs phi is 0.25. They set it to 0.25. Now, what happens if you multiply 4 times 0.25, 1/4? You get 1. So in the end, right, this is really, these things go away, right? And so we just have we have to get rid of these things, and I should have had a thing that would do that. But it would be the trade deficit divided by M, right? So just epsilon and phi go away. So just ignore them, right? And so in the end, all they did was calculate the difference in exports and imports and divide it by imports, right? And so this whole thing, or everything they reported as they claimed it was the tariff rate, because when Trump is holding up that banner, find a picture, look at it. It says at the top, these are the tariff rates charged to the U.S., including all sorts of other things. But they didn't calculate that. All they did was calculate the trade balance there, right? They took the gap, the exports minus imports divided by the total number of imports, right? So when you see a number like, let's say China is, let's say a nation, we won't pick on China, a nation is at 70%. That means that the trade gap is equal to 70% of the imports. And the way you could look at it and say, all right, that means that U.S. exports only amounted to 30%, right? You just one minus whatever that number is. That's what U.S. exports were in relation to the imports. But it's just a measure of the trade balance. The idea that, however, what they did is they took this number, divided it by two, because they said, well, we're going to discount it and only charge half. The thing is, no nation is charging anything like these tariff rates. Everyone knows that. We know what the tariff rates are. People calculate these things. What they did is they have this very wonky assumption, right? They picked an epsilon and phi, an elasticity and pass-through that were maybe right, but these things change for markets. They change. Elasticity changes a lot for different products. Elasticity is you have an elasticity of demand for a particular product. You're going to have a much lower elasticity of demand for gasoline than you are going to have for, say, bourbon, right? If bourbon goes up in price, you're gonna do without the bourbon more than you can do without the gas, and so it's byproduct. And the pass through is really also very problematic. But they picked numbers that would eliminate them, and so they didn't add them in. They might as well not be there. They might as well have just done this, and so they passed this off as something that it simply is not. So there's the full gory details and all the ugly math.